Our guest today is Tom Keister from TECO Westinghouse. He's the head of R&D and has a short little introduction.
Okay, thank you very much, and I want to thank Eric and the team here for inviting me here. I want to thank Texas A&M and the faculty here for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all. I enjoy talking to others and sharing my things that have happened into my life, and others have done that quite well with myself, and so I welcome this opportunity to talk to you guys. I'll try to be brief in my answers. These guys may have to give me bad facial expressions. Sometimes that doesn't bother me at all, because in R&D you got to have thick skin. But occasionally they may even have to take a pen or something to me. But I wanted to also say something that today a lot in college athletics, you see people on the field lots of times whenever something good happens to them, like they make a catch, like has happened a lot here recently, or make a touchdown. A lot of people point to the sky and they thank God for that. I think that's a welcome and a good thing in which we all do. But I also want to tell you that tough times are also good times. Tough times are times in which you will learn more. I tell my young men and women at the facility where I'm working at, I tell them that often pain is gain. Lots of times it'll be through, you won't even consider change if you're only scoring touchdowns. But if you're getting hit and knocked for losses, you might try to move the other way next time. And so I want to say that from my perspective, I thank God for the good times, which is right here, and I thank God for the bad times, which helped develop my character. I also want to thank TECO Westinghouse for letting me be here. They're supporting this effort for me to be here, and I want to thank them. And I want to thank my team back there that's keeping on working, because we have tons of work to do. And that they're not up here or not chasing me around trying to find out on my phone what to do next. I also want to thank lots of teams that I've got to lead before. I mentioned in my bios that I've gotten a chance to work globally with teams around the world. And I want to tell you that inside of that teamwork, whenever I look back at my career, those are the things that I remember. I had some successful products, but I remember the people working in them, and I remember the results of the people and the hard work of the people. So I wanted to just mention them at this time, even though they're not here. When I speak, you might hear me say I a lot. It's not a lot of I in there. There's a whole lot of people standing up here with me. So I wanted to make certain that's clear. I wanted to also say that from an R&D perspective, when I originally got started, some words that be associated with R&D for me, or new product development, would be ideas, concepts, ivory tower. That was things in which I got started many years ago in what I'm doing. But now, today, it's not like that at all, and it's not in a bad way. It's just more like products, results. There's more things that we talk about when you talk about, what are you really? And I'd say, well, that's kind of hard to say. I'm a manager, I'm a team leader, I'm a technical leader. I also, though, like my best words are a power electronics engineer. I don't want you to be worried or afraid of that, because really, to me, that's kind of pretty simple. When I went to school, there wasn't any power electronics. There was power and electronics. And so I'm really proud to see all the people in that industry and all the growth that's come through that. I work with power and power semiconductors. I work with feedback circuits, interface circuits, analog, digital, control and software, all those things. But really, they're just a small part of my world. I also interface with mechanical engineers in packaging and in thermal. I also interface with industrial engineers and manufacturing engineers to produce things, and in processes with quality engineers. I also am involved with application engineers, involved with system engineers, involved with service engineers and site engineers, civil engineers. I'd say that from an engineering perspective, my life is rich. because I get to work with almost every aspect of engineering. But beyond engineering, there's the business side of the world, and it didn't stop there. I cross over into marketing and sales, into management, sometimes not so much fun, into accounting and legal, all kinds of different areas, and those things touch you within new product development. I encourage my folks, when you come out of school, a lot of times you don't have experience in those areas, but I encourage them to take steps towards that. And to make a product, I really believe strongly that a smart product is good for a smart business. And I believe that you integrate that through by thinking of the whole business, not just the technology behind the software for that. That software is developed for the whole business. So that's a real challenge to us today. It was a lot easier whenever I just had to have an idea. It was a lot easier when people looked at me and said, "Oh, you get to walk away from this. You all live in the ivory tower." Maybe, but I'm having a lot more fun making real things. And I think that's kind of what I would like to leave with you, that in new product development, it's much more broader than just something that you're looking at on a board. I wanted to make that comment to you so that you could see that if you weren't, especially if you were wondering whether you were in this position looking at new product development, or if you were maybe, I didn't know what side of the group, I was telling Eric, maybe it's civil engineers, maybe it's all kinds of engineering, industrial, whatever, and I welcome you, because I think what you'll hear today from me can be taken with respect to those other disciplines, because I'm not an expert in those disciplines, but I've worked a lot of years with people in those disciplines that have helped us learn. Okay? So that's probably about all I need to say before your questions, so we can get through it.
Okay. Can you name a person who has a tremendous impact on you as a leader? Maybe someone who has been your mentor to you. Why and how did that person impact your life?
Okay, so I would say that, wow, this is a rich basket for me, something that I've been really blessed in. I'd say my mom and dad were really tough on me. I could talk about them a lot, but I know you all probably could sympathize with me on that. And that helped put the seeds, though, there. I digged many a ditch, dug many a thing. My father would kind of be laughing at me sometimes, but he was proud of me for following what he was doing. So those things I really take, and it really made a lot of the makeup of how I am. But also, I thought of, whenever I saw this question about 30 minutes ago, about, you know, who came into my mind? One of them, a really bad football coach. And I said, "Why are you coming to my mind?" And I said, "Because he taught me to be tough. He didn't care whether my parents, who they were, or what I was, or anything. He didn't care that I had friends. He just wanted me to be tough. He wanted to win the game. In business, that's a lot of what you get into, and you have to be tough to be able to do it." I joked about thick skin. That's a real important thing to hang in this business, is to have this. But I think about people inside of businesses that I've been at General Electric, at Reliance Electric, at TECO Westinghouse now, other people where I was involved with, and there's people that were, I would say the people that were my best mentors were people that didn't spoon feed me. You might hear that several times in this. We all like to be spoon fed, but they didn't spoon feed me at all. They challenged me. And what they helped me with was thinking. They wouldn't give me the answer. I always feel sorry for somebody when I know the answer and they're sitting there struggling, and they had the patience to wait and not give me the answer. They had the patience to say, "Struggle." They had the patience to endure. I had one boss that said to me, I went in there and I told him, I said, "I can't make up my mind. I've really studied this, and there's really two solutions." And I told him the first one, and I told him the second one. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I can see it's really tough." He said, "I think you should do the second one." And I walked away knowing that I should have done the first one. So I stewed on that for 2 weeks. And I tried to make that second one work, because my boss had told me that. I came back in to him and on something else, and he said, "Oh, by the way, how's that going?" I said, he looked at me and said, "What? It's not working?" And I said, "No, sir, it's not working. It's just a mess." He said, I knew when you left here, you knew what the answer was, and you let me pick it. Don't you ever come in here and ask your boss the answer when you know it. And I remembered that. That's an important thing. If you know the answer, it may be a tough answer, but don't ask somebody else to answer it for you that it's going to make it any easier, because it's not. And those are people that, to me, help me out a lot. So, and now what kind of impact it had on my life? I would say that I also want to mentor and help people. I'd say that to me, as I owned my own business maybe a few years ago, it's more than that, maybe about 7 years ago. Part of my business plan, though, was I worked, and I wanted to share this with you, I worked with at Georgia Tech. And I had several customers, and at Georgia Tech, engineering, I took on their graduate students in electrical engineering to help mentor them. That was something that I wanted to do, and it wasn't always easy because we had to meet at all kinds of odds hours, as you all will know. But it was something that I really enjoy doing, and I would welcome, I welcome and want you all to look for the same type of opportunities with people, because it can be quite helpful. Yeah. That's only one question.
What are the most important decisions you've made as a leader in your organization?
Yeah, I think I basically would boil them down to, and there's probably something else that I'm not thinking of quickly off the hand, but basically 3 types of decisions I make. One is with people, the other one is with products, and the other one is with business that we do. With people, you probably have to say, people would say maybe it's hiring and firing, it's tough decisions. I would kind of say, for me, it's always tough on how that I merge their daily working activities with their lives that they need to have outside with our goals that we need to accomplish. And I said, and that to me is really where it hits the road. I kind of don't do the other very often. With products, it's also lots of decisions about what is the right cost, what is the, you might think that always you're fortunate enough to somebody to come and give you the question and all you got to do is answer it. But in product development, you don't even get the questions. And lots of times, the only time people can answer you is if you create something and they get to critique it. Now, that's a lot of fun. You create and they critique. And so, but that's kind of the way that goes with the product. And sometimes it's hard to endure because you put a lot of time and effort and extra hours and sacrifice in to get something, and it gets critiqued by people who maybe didn't spend so many hours on it, right? And then the other thing is in business. And in business, it has great impact on not only how much money the company makes, but also your environment, what you get to do for your next year, for your engineering and all your products, and how you grow your people and everything. And so those are always, that is also tough decisions that I have to make on that. So.
As an organization gets larger, there can be a tendency for an institution to dampen the inspiration. How do you keep this from happening? Yeah, break down barriers. That's what I'd say. And break down barriers. That's pretty a general statement. One of my most effective tools at TECO Westinghouse. Every business I've been in, and you're getting a perspective of really where I'm at present, and I'd be glad to spend 3 or 4 more weeks with you telling you about all the other things, because I can get quite wordy, right? But I'm going to talk about the present with them. I'd say the R&D and development group, I treat as a startup company, okay? And so because I've been around startups and everything, I don't allow us to think, oh, we get paid even if we don't. I put goals and set our agenda like we're going to eat off of what we do. And so that's kind of that's a very effective tool, and it's a good way the young people around me, or the people that's in my team, I believe it's a helpful way for them to be more aggressive. We also focus externally. In a large company or in companies, internal focus is dominant at times. And focus externally. Don't get too caught up about where you think things are going to end up inside the company and the company politics. So, all right.
Where do the great ideas come from in your organization?
Yeah. So I think that this is one of my most funnest things. That is from anybody. Okay, you could say that. I believe, I said to, when I created some technology at GE, there was a person that was a technician on the floor, and he was listed on one of the patents that we got there. And my boss said, "How in the world did he get there?" And I said, "Because he asked the right question." He kept on asking me questions in a meeting, and I kept on trying to shut him up. And he kept on asking a question. And I kept on having to dig deeper into that question. And in the middle of that question, I said, "My goodness, I just then thought of something. That was a good question." And so I'm just saying that it can happen. So don't narrow your sights in that it has to be somebody like yourself, or it's only going to come out of you. It can come out of anybody. The second thing is, I think teamwork, more ideas. When we originally started in engineering, a concept that people had in engineering was that people were pitted or competed against each other. And so it actually discouraged teamwork, because if you were trying to get to the top, you certainly didn't want to help the guy beside you. What it did is it fragmented a lot of ideas, and when I started becoming leaders within our organization, I had to tear down those barriers. I had to encourage people to talk to one another, that as a team, I would go in one room. I'm sorry I'm going to be wordy on this, but I'd go in one room, and the man would be sitting there struggling with something. I'd go out of that room and go into the room right beside him. Very smart people, I'm telling you, very smart, a lot smarter than me. Go into the next room, I'd describe the problem, that guy'd say, "Oh, that's easy, I can fix it right like that," and they would never talk to each other. And to me, that was very frustrating, because they would talk to me because they felt safe talking to me. They knew that they were okay talking to me. But at the same time, I had to break down those barriers, because it was much more efficient for them not to sit there to collaborate together. And I saw that early on and often, and so in my teams today, I work hard on keeping people talking. Okay?
All right. What advice would you give to someone going into a leadership position for the first time?
You're better if you work with others. That's what that's what my tendency would be. I think once you're getting the opportunity to lead, a lot of time your tendency will be that you need to show everybody how good you are. It's a real tendency, I'm telling you. My first time leading, I thought, man, this is an opportunity. Oh, I could just see. This is what my dreams were. And I started out very strongly, only depending upon myself. But I quickly realized that the team was not a team if I wasn't a part of the team. I could call team all I wanted, but I needed to be a part of the team. And once I integrated myself with the team, that means you're just not telling, you're listening. And when you listen, a lot of things good can happen. And together we did a lot of great things.
What is one mistake you witness leaders making more frequently than others?
Yeah. One mistake that I would say is that, especially early in my career, and I hope that it's not so often now, but I'd have to say two, but the main one is using fear to think it's a motivator. I want to tell you that one of the first things I do when I enter a room with my teams, if not every meeting, at least occasionally, is to at least go through and try to let them see an example of me not being God, if you could say, of me being human, and trying to allow them to have a space that they can tell me that they're not able to do what they thought they could do, and that was really important. And that's what I think you've got to do. Again, we ran into tremendous delays. Whenever you're trying to make things as fast as technology is trying to make it happen, to keep your costs down and do everything, you can't be doing it with one arm tied behind your back. And then it's almost both, because it will paralyze you if you are worried only about failure. Failure can do that for you, and motivating people with fear only encourages that. As engineers, we always focus on what's going wrong. we don't do a good job of focusing on our successes. And so I try to strike a balance there, because of course we got to fix what is wrong. But you also got to recognize, and you've got to be able to lift yourself out of that and think clearly, and that's done with a healthy mind.
What are a few resources you would recommend to someone looking to gain insight into becoming a better leader?
Yeah, two ways. One is be around somebody that's a leader. You may not even be a good leader, but start watching your leaders, whoever you think is a leader, and watch them. You'll learn from, I believe very much, I think it was Edison that said, you learn a lot more from what's going wrong than what's going right. So if they're too good, you may not learn a whole lot. But if you watch people and watch leaders, that's something good. And I think also when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's also very important. People who are around people who are starting businesses are much more capable of doing it. Not just that it's osmosis. It's just you see they're dumb enough to be able to do it. You can do it too. And so you see the humanity involved there, and I don't mean that in a real bad way, dumb there. But the other thing I would say is that, so my first thing was what? Can you remind me? The first point? Anybody remember? Can you remind me?
Leaders.
Okay, watching. And the second thing, take steps towards leadership. I'm sorry about that. But take steps towards leadership. I believe that as you're going to hear me say many times in design and development or new product design or in any role of engineering you're at, you can sit here at this room and think everything out. But I can guarantee you that if you take steps towards it, what I say, not just physical steps, sometimes it takes that, get out of your chair and start moving towards a solution. But also, start moving towards it, you'll see clearer. Don't look from where you're just looking at today. Take steps. You don't want to put so many steps that it takes you your whole lifetime to make one thing. So you've got to put that in perspective. But you do want to take steps towards it. And leadership is one of those things that failing will teach you lots of lessons. You can, and you might say, well, I really don't have a team to lead here in engineering, or I'm not a manager of a group or something. I'd say pick Little League or something, lead. You'll find plenty of ways you're going to learn. Plenty of ways, okay?
All right. As a leader, you're bound to have someone under you and multiple people under you. And if they have a confrontation, how would you resolve something like that?
So I always, consistency is the best rule. Okay, so how do you be consistent when you're talking to people? Okay, I always say treat them as I'd like to be treated myself. That's how I maintain consistency. Hopefully, over 50 years, I've been somewhat consistent on that. But you've got to realize that sometimes personalities are very difficult. Like I told you about the two people that's in the room. You can't fix every problem. But what you need to do is try to make a functional team out of it. And so you do the best in managing the problems between them, being honest with them, and also trying to, I think a lot of the thing is diffusing, being a peacemaker, diffusing things that's around it. Whenever they come back and say, oh, I know they're just waiting for me to fail, you say, no, they're not. They're not waiting for you to fail. We're all wanting you to win. That means all of us win. Don't think like that. And so you just kind of diffuse things like that and stuff. So.
What organizations have you been a part of that have helped develop your leadership qualities?
Yeah, well, I just mentioned one. I would say one of the most toughest for me was that I, for several years, was either a what they called a VP or ran Little League. And I'll tell you that when you're dealing with parents and their kids, when you're dealing with Saturday mornings and umps not showing up, it's a good atmosphere to challenge your leadership, and it's a good atmosphere to be. Certainly that may not have been what you would expected. I think that I think within the businesses that I have, the one of the best places that I think my leadership was really honed a lot was whenever I started my own business. And it helped me, and when I say I started my own, I remember what I said in the beginning. There's lots of people involved there, okay? But recruiting other people to be a part of the business, other things and things along that line. And so that was, that really you had to, there was nobody else. I had one boss to me when I was at Reliance say, he came to me and he said, how about this, this, and this? We're planning out our next year, and this, want to do this, this, and this. And I said, yeah, I think this, but I wouldn't do it this way. I'd do it like this, this, and this, and this. And this. But I said, at the end of that, I just said, but you should go ask your experts. And he said, what? You are my experts. Sometimes you've got to realize that whenever you're dealing with things, you need to be able to assume the role that you're needing to do. And sometimes you've got to take risks with that. So.
Okay. On the ethics.
Yes?
When you're making a decision, is there a set of questions or process you go through to decide if the decision you're making is the ethical choice?
Okay. So I actually have my opening as a part of this in ethics. So I can try to be brief here. But there's many opinions about the role of personal morality with respect to ethics. Many opinions on that. And I am no expert on it. I can see as in my lifetime, I see all kinds of corporate ethics and all kinds of other things that have passed my way in my experience. I lean upon my morality, my personal right and wrong. That's the first thing in which I do. I kind of think it's practical. Again, it helps me to be consistent with what I'm doing. But many times I cannot use that alone. We're going to talk about in a few minutes about corporate and different things along that line. And so it's good to challenge. It's good to think outside of your typical right and wrong statements, and it's good to be challenged by ethics of the situation. And maybe try to think differently, but from my perspective, that's where the rubber hits the road on with my personal morality.
Okay. Well, one person who's spoken here before, his test that he uses is, can he go home and tell his 8-year-old?
Well, that's a good way. I think that's probably it. And I think for myself, I look at things as things in which are not just work. So through my career, I've been blessed enough to think that when I'm at work, I'm just another phase of my life that day, right? So I can respect what he's saying right there. It's exactly what you have to do. You're not in a different place. I tell my kids this is not, you aren't what you say you are, it's what you do. You are what you do. So so that's something that you need to remember. If you're finding out that you don't like who you are, change how you are or what you're doing, because you are what you're doing. Okay.
There's a comment saying that this is a dog-eat-dog world. Do you think that applies to the business world?
Yeah.
Have you had that experience?
Yeah. So I've had some tremendous experiences with respect to that. We had one area in which I could tell you just briefly about is that when I owned my own business, and we'll talk about that. Maybe we can just fill it in when we get to the other sections. This was a tough thing that happened to me. But I knew the people in which I was, the other business I was actually partnering with. And in it, we wrote up a contract. And in the contract, it said, these really important things in it. And so basically, we developed I developed the product. A part of it is that they would apply the money and I would apply the knowledge and how to do it and build the product and do all that kind of stuff, and then we would both co-own the product. So basically, we went to a big show with the product, and then at that show, the whole booth, where they normally had 5 people in that booth, the whole booth was filled. There was people back 7 rows in the aisleways and everything, and we were all excited, and it was a big hit, the product was. And so, on the way back in the plane flight, the owner of their business and I was sitting in the same thing. We were talking about how great it was, and he said, but there's one thing that's puzzling me. I was reading our contract, and I don't think it was written very clearly. And I said, what? He said, yeah, I think we should look at that when we get back. We should look at it. What ended up to be is that he believed he had more money than I had in my company and in my own personal resources. And so it didn't matter to him what the contract said. He thought that he could take it from me. And so if you want to talk about dog eat dog with people that you know, I had 2 other engineers that were part owners with me. He stole them right away, gave them money. He tried to do the same to me. I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to. We had a deal. And so it was $5 million, $10 million suits on your heads and stuff. But we were able to make it through it because ultimately he needed this thing to be free for me. But I'm just telling you, it was a dog eat dog. It taught me a lot of things. I'll talk about some of them later.
What is the hardest ethical dilemma you have faced in your career?
Yeah, I would say basically what I was talking about there is that it was basically people and friends. I would say the second part of it was my. Who else would you? I would maybe want to ask you all. What kind of people would you like to be partners with you in a company that you've been dreaming of all your life? Maybe you would pick somebody who was your friend. And I had 2 really good friends in that business, and they were strong friends, and they toughed it out through a lot of hard nights with me and a lot of things. But when it came down to it, that they were worried that they might lose everything, there was a chance that they might lose everything, they decided it was easier to just ignore the contract and just go back with the other people. And so that was a hard dilemma for me to personally, because they were asking me to do it too, and I said, I can't. That's not ethical. That's wrong. So.
Do you believe that ethics should be taught in school?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult subject to teach in school, especially if you think about it from a corporate perspective, because we could talk about all day, like I said, from small companies to large companies and the differences of ethics. When I ran my own business, in this book right here, this is Tico Westinghouse benefits and proprietary and everything. I want you to kind of get a chance to see something real here besides just my words here. And so, but inside of it, it says, it's got a statement in here that I think you all would find interesting. You could read it if you wanted to at night and get all your time in there. But it was basically, it says, there are ways conflicts of interest can arise, okay? Placing company business with a firm owned or controlled by a TWMC, that's Tico Westinghouse Motor Company, employee, or his or her family or friends. Now, when I own my own business, I want to tell you, I was interested in the best solution. I wasn't interested in all this, and if it was my friend, I just figured, boy, this is better for the business. And don't you think that the people at the top of this also would struggle with this, because they make deals with their friends all the time. But you can also see why that could be a problem, right? Ethically, problem. You could rip off the company, giving it to somebody that wasn't good. So that's kind of, you have to, that would be an example. Another example that you guys would probably fail all the time would be, that we do all the time, but I don't remind my teammate, is teasing. Teasing within our company is ethically immoral. It's not right, because you may mis-tease somebody. You may do it from a racial perspective, or you may do it from a gender perspective or something. But we were just in a meeting yesterday, and the guy had spent, maybe 10 minutes working on this. It's a terrible thing to tell you, but we were actually modifying a Word document with a group of 3 or 4 of us in there, and a guy's trying to do it while he's typing, and it was a purchase request and all that, purchase order and stuff. But anyway, he erased the whole 4th column thinking that it was erased, and it took him a little bit of time, and we turned around when he got through, and we said, now item number 4, which was just the thing that he erased. And he said, what? We teased him, okay? Our workplace would be very dull without any laughter, right? But it's an important, you can understand why that's in our code of conduct. And so it's something. So anyway, all right?
Would you rather have a coworker that would do anything to get things done, or would stay ethical and true to their moral standing?
Yeah, definitely for somebody who's honest. I don't believe you can be selectively honest, and so it would come back and be a problem at some other time. But at the same time, doing anything, you got to also understand. I guess this one was from Einstein. He says, "We don't have rules here. We're trying to get something done." I would tell you that I always am encouraging my people to think and to make certain that whether things are the right way. Sometimes different may at first seem a problem. You need to think about it. You need to do the right thing then, right? But if it's clearly an unethical thing, absolutely not. I would not want that.
Is there a specific code of ethics you follow when you do business?
Well, we have a code here, which I should say that we follow. And when I was at General Electric, we had a code that we followed and everything. And what I would say is that sometimes, like at the business that we're at right now, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But basically, the large portion of our business is a factory. And a factory has a lot different, when they would talk about how codes of conduct or anything is, or their ethics policy would be geared a lot different than in an R&D group. They would say that it's more important to be there between the hours of 7:30 to 4:30 than it is on well, they wouldn't say not results, but they don't say anything about your results, right? We would much be more results oriented. But it blends over into these policies. So I try to use as much of the code, and I respect this, and I do follow it, but I try to interpret it as best I can for the people I'm trying to lead. All right? I just don't. You can take a couple approaches on ethics. You can always try to minimize your risk, mitigate everything, and let the human aspect of it fall to the ground, right? Everybody is just a slave to it. Or you can think, and I prefer the other. It's not without risk.
I'd like to present a hypothetical.
Oh boy.
You're in charge of getting a life-saving medicine to an aid center in a foreign country. You get to the port, the medicine has a week left before it's no good. Mm-hmm. The typical time to get through that port is 2 days. So you would have had time to get it to the aid center. The official at the port says, you must pay me a bribe or it will stay here for 3 weeks. It's your company's policy not to pay bribes under any circumstances. This medicine, however, will save thousands of people's lives. What do you do and why?
That's a bad problem. In ways, we're faced with those problems not nearly as maybe as what do they call those things? Soap opera-ish type, you know. But we're faced with these problems and dilemmas all the time. I would hope I would do everything in my power to get that medicine to them. And I would hope that my businesses and what I would be involved with would do their best to honor what I was trying to do in the situation I was in. So I don't think the bad situation gives you a pass on what do you call it, the ramifications of what you're doing. At the same time, it's not, at the end of the day, for me, it's not that code of ethics, and it's not those type things that are motivating me to do the right things, right? So you may suffer quite a bit, but you do the right thing as much as you can. That would be that I try to follow laws until I cannot follow laws, right?
Okay.
Okay. Hindsight is 2020, and now that you've started many.
Probably I started a war right there, huh, or something. No. So anyway.
Yeah. You started many successful businesses. What advice would you give to someone trying to follow on that path?
Yeah. So I had 9 steps for that when I was going to tell you about it. But I would say that I'd say primarily 2 of them is what I would say if I could talk a little bit about them. One of the things is that I think you need to strike balance. Everything, whenever I worked in a business, was really, it's sort of like, especially if you're doing it in development product, I guess at any business, I'm not going to say that. People can't get enough of you. And so when I talk about balance in your life, you have a passion or you wouldn't be there doing that. Your passion is to do it. But there's other people and other things that makes your passion alive. You won't have your passion if everything goes away, I'll tell you. And so probably one of the things that I would say to people is try to live and try to respect the balance in your life that got you to where you're at. Because without that, you won't be just, and it's sort of like, I think of people today with us all, how we can get addicted to a video game or to something like that, and it can just draw you in and consume you. But it's the same thing in starting your own business. You wouldn't be there and you won't be successful unless you put tons of energy. But to me, the opposite of that is you won't be successful if you lose everything that you got. So I would say try to strike a balance in your life. Try to be respectful of those who have helped you get to where you're at.
When you start your business, would you rather go it alone or?
I did it both ways. Okay, so I kind of like the alone thing, okay? And the reason why I like the alone thing is I like to work in teams. So when I'm working alone, I'm working with, I integrate myself within the businesses that I'm working with, okay? So I'm really not working alone. But from the respect, if something goes wrong or I want to change my direction, ooh, I'm a free bird, right? Whenever my company went with the other was in trouble, it didn't go under, we got bought. It ended up really quite nice for us. But I had 3 employees, and all of them were brothers, sisters, or cousins of the 2 guys that left. And they were my responsibility to keep going. They had things in which they had to do. And this other business was trying to freeze me out. So I had responsibilities, and I saw it real quickly that those were things would not be there if I had not had others with me in my business. So, but I would say also the scope of the business means a whole lot. My first business we called CTQ Technologies. We thought critical to quality was our, it comes off of some of the Six Sigma stuff. And so, but the idea there is that we had our sights on the next GE or the next, whoever was on the block at that time, Apple, whatever. We had very ambitious plans, and all of us were driving towards it. That was the reason why we looked at expansion and growth and working with other companies, and it ended up quite well. Whenever I started my second company, after I'd been thrown under the bus by this other people that tried to take everything I had away from me, I called my next company JSL. Somebody might say, well, let me see, just in time? What would that all line up to be? It was my 3 kids' names, first names. Josh, Sarah, and Lizzie. I've called them all. I called my company after that to remind me of where I needed to be. So, okay.
What made you decide to start a business?
Oh, passion. No, it's because my father started a business with some other guys, which he was only a minority owner, and I got to work in that, and I kind of saw how they were and how they did it, and that kind of got a bug in my ear, and I kind of thought about it, and then I actually, like many of you all, I'm sure, I ran my own little business while I was in college. It wasn't much, but basically I did anything that I could get somebody to pay me for, kind of. So I did concrete, I did wall boards, I did electrical wiring, anything that somebody could do, and we had a group of us. And that was our business, and we kind of liked that. We kind of liked being able to go out and be real business people, right? But I had a passion for it all my life, and so as I got out of school and stuff, I got married, had kids, and I decided that I would not follow that passion until after my kids were in college. Well, they didn't quite make it to college. Some of them were still in high school. I begged my wife to let me try. But it was a fantastic experience. If you can't tell, my heart is still there, Lofton, and I treat my career right now within how I do it. Maybe I have my fascinations with running my team as a startup company. And so, but I would say it's not without lots of challenges, but it's something that I would say for you to get into. It's something that you really need to count the costs, and then when you do that, you need to be in, all the way in. Nobody else is.
In employing people in your business that you've started, how do you choose what type of people? Are they high character, high IQ? Like what type of people?
Well, in the business, there's two businesses I owned. In my first business, if you didn't pick up on it, they were relatives. And so it was people that needed a job that my other two guys had, and I wanted to help them. And that's part of what I think a business is for. And they were excellent people, and they ended up working fine. In my second business, I actually look for people, which I do whenever I look at my existing job, and that is I'm looking for somebody who I think I can help make a difference with. And so I'm kind of looking for people who are not just capable, but willing to catch a fire, willing to to grow, willing to try something new from a professional perspective there. And so, yeah.
What is your biggest obstacle when you created those two companies?
Well, the other I just gave away kind of because my other company wouldn't let me continue running it. So I gave that away, and my son runs that now. So that was not an obstacle at all. That was, in fact, I'd like to carry his golf clubs around right now. And but the first one, it was an obstacle of really, I would say that our product outgrew our business capability, which then put us in a volatile spot. As I was on an airline one time, I read an article, and it said, flying below the radar, small companies need to figure that out. I believe that I would have done a lot better if I would have delayed, instead of saying, this was my idea, okay, when I thought about it. Going to this big show and everything, I was all in for it. I liked it. Because I thought, if these people could actually see what I see and can see how great it is, we'll double or triple the investment in it, and we'll really plow forward. It'll be like a water hose going into our gasoline. It'll just fuel this and we'll go off. But did I misunderstand the situation? Yeah, I did, because they were in this the way they were, and we were working out. But it's because they didn't realize how good it was. Once they realized how good it was, then it was a whole different game for them. So,
in the company that failed, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, what I just said. Basically, trying to keep my vision intact, and trying to understand that there's any time that you're working with other people, listen very carefully to what they're saying and what their goals and what their ambitions are and what they're really trying. Don't try to imagine something different for them. Listen to them, and that'll help you adapt yourself to a changing situation.
Starting a business requires funding and support. How do you get people to believe in your idea and you enough to support you in building a business?
For me, it was a little bit easy because I had several years of experience and was successful at doing some of the things that I was doing. And so, but also I believe what contributed more than that, you might say, well, wow, that sounded pretty easy. I think what really contributed is that I recognized early in my process of engineering that that you having a good idea is only part of the problem of getting to a new business. There's a whole lot of other things that go on with it. One of the biggest deals that I would say is being able to communicate and sell your ideas properly. And so I think for myself, with respect to this, is that I learned the salesmanship role. I'm trying to stay up with your questions
I think
here.
if you wanted to do a short wrap-up, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Okay. So I think that if I were going to wrap up anything with respect to this, I would say that from a leadership perspective, that teamwork and setting up win-win situations is real important. And I want you to kind of remember that, is that when you work within a team, when somebody else is succeeding in that team, share that glory with them or share that success with them, and know that your value isn't only from what everybody else is seeing your value in. One of the things that I'm trying to, that is always hard as a young person, is realizing that your business relationship is not a 50-50 deal. That your business relationship's just like a marriage, and I don't know how many of y'all are married, but I can tell you, I went into it thinking it was a 50-50, and maybe I was doing 60 or 70, and it wasn't even working out. But it really isn't a 50-50. I have to try. I always tell other people, when I'm doing my 90, I'm probably getting up to about 20 on her scale, right? And so you have to respect that with the situation. So a win-win is real important for both people. Both people, you'll be really strong within a team if people believe that it's a win-win situation, and you don't do that by any other way than by helping each other in the best way and clearest way, so that you're not adversaries, you're working together. And so I'd say that's from one of the things that I wanted to say from a leadership. Because a lot of times when you're in a situation like with a vendor or something like that, not just with a co-employee, you think, well, I'm better off if I can get this vendor down. But really, the ideal situation is that you're both in a strong position, and then you both can be strong to go forward. So I'm not saying give away money. I'm just saying when I worked at GE, we actually crippled many businesses. And I would say that, in the end, wasn't very strong for us because it hurt us. People started cutting corners on us because they couldn't make stuff. So anyway, that'd be one. The second one is that I wanted to leave with you is that if you want to be an entrepreneur, be around people who are. I think that's there's lots of stuff written on it. You can read this up. I think it influenced my life a lot. I don't know if I would have had the guts to do it, but I saw people around me doing it, and that motivated me to think I could do it. So I think that's, if you're interested in that, be around people. Find somebody, go work for somebody who's like that, and you'll find out a lot more. And the last thing I would say always is to take steps towards your solutions. In engineering, it's awful easy to think you know everything. It's awful easy to be in a room full of all these bright minds, and we start talking about a solution, and we think we know everything. But you don't know how many meetings I've been into in which we put our best minds to problems with years of experience, and we took what I call a step towards the solution, and we found out we didn't know very much. And I think by taking those steps, you will get clearer images, clearer knowledge, clearer understanding, and your solution. Some people call that continuous improvement. I call it step towards the solutions. You can't always know everything perfectly on your first idea. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for listening and everything.
Open up to questions.
Question.
Yes.
So, the definition of ethics is doing what's right in a given situation, right? Mm-hmm. And you've spoken a lot about balancing your time between work and family, and things that you hold dear to your heart. what's your philosophy on how you balance those? What's the ethical way to balance your personal life versus your passion of working as an entrepreneur, and how did you deal with that struggle?
Yeah, I would say in some sense it's other obligations that you're committed to. And I think it's important for you in any type of a business that you're in or any type of a job you're in to try to, when you I make commitments all the time with respect to a new product when it's going to be done. And when I do that, I try to weigh the obligations I have. If I promise people that I'm going to be someplace or do something else, or I've got 10 other projects that I'm ethically, I believe that it's my responsibility to make certain that even though it may not make the guys smile that I'm talking to, I give them my honest assessment. And sometimes that's tough because we want to, as an engineer or a designer, as a creator, you want to do it all, right? But I believe in doing as much as you can and pushing yourself to be your best, but that's always within the context, within your families and within your groups of people, that you've got to respect the health system that's around you. And I think that whether that's an ethical question or not about respecting how you got there, I try to use both of those as motivating tools to me to help me choose wisely, right? But it's difficult. My wife will say to me, "I thought that was the last one," and I said, "Yikes, yeah." But she's a patient woman. Yes.
You're talking about this problem product or this great product that you have. I was just wondering if you could just maybe a hint as to.
Oh yeah. I didn't know. I don't know if you have. One of the things I didn't know if it'd be possible. It's not. Greatness is in the eyes of the beholder. So I respect your kind words there. Okay, and so if there is, we have a little brief movie of about 5 or 6 minutes that I would welcome if we showed it to some extent. I don't know if we have the facilities here to do it. But maybe we can go to a computer or laptop somewhere. Maybe y'all got one sitting around somewhere, and we can pop it up on it, and we can look over the shoulders of it. It doesn't have music, and so you can pop in your pods. And if you don't want to listen to me, I probably won't be able to be quiet while it's running. So if you're tired of me, put your earplugs in, right? Yep.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Question. You seem very comfortable talking to groups of people.
Yeah.
Is that an inherent trait that you've always had, or?
Well, I'll tell you this. It's sort of like to me, you're talking about things that are dear to me. And so, like I said, that kind of is capturing my inhibitions and my concerns, my fears. I think of you guys as important seeds that are going to be out there within doing the same things. I want to tell you as much as I can, but at the same time, what did I tell you at the beginning? Spoon feeding. You can only take so much of it. The rest you got to kind of endure and figure out yourself. And that's the best teacher. That pain a lot of times will be the best. But I appreciate that question. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? All right, well, we'll end it. And, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you.
If you'll join us for dinner shortly.
Yes, and I welcome anybody. I don't know if there's a place we can plug that in.
Not
It's
here,
kind of interesting.
but-
So maybe I can leave it to you. You can mail it to me. Maybe I better check and see what's on
so
it.
I can.
Oh, you got one? So, it's finished? So, all right.
What were you
get started with that, why don't we all thank Mr. Keister for joining us?